Hi everyone, welcome back. Naji here. In this video, we will be discussing on Azure AI Foundry. And the plan is we will be discussing like a high level architecture of Azure AI Foundry. Then we will deploy a model in Azure AI Foundry, and we will be using the Python SDK to connect with Azure AI Foundry. So that is the agenda plan for this video tutorial. So first, let's start with this diagram. So if you look on this diagram, Azure AI Foundry is mainly connected with three category of items. So one is the model catalog, then second is the agent service, and third is the enterprise control. So here we can start with the model catalog. So Azure AI Foundry, which actually supports nearly 1900 plus models, nearly like a 2000 plus models are supported by the Azure AI Foundry, which includes OpenAI, not only GPT-4o, like there are other five versions, 5 series also supporting. Then Meta Llama, DeepSeek, Microsoft 5, and Black Forest Labs. So a lot of models are supported by the Azure AI Foundry. So we can deploy these models based on our requirement. Then it supports or it's actually provide a very easy way to deploy the agents. We can create autonomous multi-step workflows, and it's provide the built-in memory and the what we call tool routing, and it's also provide the multi-agent orchestration. Then the third component is the enterprise control. Okay, Azure AI provide a production grade MLOps pipeline, and Entra ID identity and the VNet isolation is also provide built-in observability and the tracing. So everything needed for the agent service or the model LLM service is provided by the Azure AI Foundry, and it is very easy to integrate and very easy to connect with our Python or any programming SDKs. Okay, now let's create a project in Azure AI Foundry, and we'll see how can we deploy a model there. For that, let me go to my browser. Okay, so you guys can go and search for ai.azure.com. Okay, so if you are first time in this Azure AI Foundry, you have to create an account there. Okay, then I already have the account. Then I can click on the new Foundry. So this will give us the option to create a project. So let me go and create a project. And by default, it is giving a project name like Naji Abu -1809. I'm not going to change that. Let me go and create this. Okay, so this may take a couple of minutes to deploy. Okay, so once the deployment is completed, we can easily create or we can easily deploy a model to it. Okay, maybe let me do a pause, then we can rejoin once it's completed. Okay, now the project creation is completed. So here it is giving some kind of a instruction for us. Maybe we can close this. Okay. Okay, so now we have our project is there. No models are deployed yet. Okay, so if you look on the top right, we can see a few menus. One is discover, build, operate, and manage. So let's click on the discover. So if you click on discover, we can see a lot of models. We can see it here. Let me click on view all models. Right, so it is loading. We can see that for this project, I have only available 225 records, maybe because of the region and different reasons. But if you look on all models, we can see that these many models are available. Okay, now maybe let me switch back to the available in my models. What I'm going to do, I'm going to deploy a GPT-4o model. Okay, so before that, we have a option that is provided by Azure AI Foundry. That is, we can have an option to compare the models. Let me click on this compare model. Okay, so here we can compare different models like GPT-5 and GPT-4o and the Grok models we can compare, and I can compare the Sonnet also here. So this provide the quality, then safety and estimated cost and throughput. Different various things are there. Based on our requirement, we can figure out which model that we need. Okay, so for this testing purpose, I'm going to search for GPT-5 mini is what we are going to deploy. Okay, this is the model. So let me select this model. Okay, it is loading the model. Go and deploy this. Going to use the default settings. That's it. Okay, so deployment is completed. Now maybe I can test it using hi. Okay, so it says, okay, this is working fine. It says, how can I help you today? I can see the tokens, seconds, everything we will get as a response. Now, want to show you, let's go to the manage. Okay, so if you go to the manage, we can see different configurations for this project. Here I can see the tenant ID. Okay, and here we can see the API key, project end resource. These all these things we needed when we connect using the Python SDK. Okay, now okay, so this is the basic deployment part is done. Now we can see how can we connect is using the Python SDK. For that, I have my Visual Studio Code is there. Okay, so we need a SDK, right? So the SDK, let me uh, have some zoom in. Okay, okay, so this is the okay, I'm just setting my zoom. Okay, fine. So what we are going to do, we are going to install the SDK for this Azure AI Foundry. Okay, for that I can search for AI project py Azure AI project. So this is the SDK that we need. Okay, so let me copy this. I can do the installation here. So I'm using the UV. That's why I'm using the UV here. Otherwise, you can directly use the pip install Azure AI project. So let me execute it. Okay. So the execution part is completed. Now we can start importing few things, right? So for that, first let me import the OS, and we can have from Azure Azure.ai.project. We can import the AI project can be imported. Now we need to have an identity, right? For that, I can import Azure identity. We can import the client seeker credentials. Okay. Now we need few things. Okay. So one is we need a client ID. Okay. Then we need a client secret. Okay. Then we need a tenant ID. Okay. Uh, we need a project URL. We need a deployed model. Okay, so let's try to understand or try to get these values for these things from our Azure AI Foundry. Okay, for that what we can do, we can go back to our portal. Okay, so this is our tenant ID. So let me copy this here, paste it here. Okay, copy from there and paste it here. So we have the tenant ID is there. My project this project URL is the project endpoint. I can paste it here. Okay, then model is, we know the model that we have done is GPT 5o mini. O is not there, I believe. So 5 mini is that we have deployed. Now we need to get client ID and the client secret. Okay, let's see from where we will get this. Okay, for that we need to create a Entra app, Entra ID, and based on the Entra ID, we need to have this client ID and the client secret. Okay, how this Entra ID is works, right? So that is the question. Okay, or why we need the Entra ID? So ideally, sorry, let me close this. Okay, I can close this. Okay, so let me show you this diagram. So how a call or from the Python, how a call to Azure AI Foundry works, right? So we will have a Python application will be there. So when we say that, okay, tell me about something, okay, we are triggering a LLM from our Python application. Internally, what it does is it will first communicate with the Entra ID, right? And it will ensure that this particular application, the client ID and the client secret is valid, and based on that we will get some kind of a token, right? So based on this token, it will check that, okay, this particular user has a permission to execute the Azure AI Foundry, and that token is passed to the Azure AI Foundry endpoint, and we will get the result. Okay, to 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 implement this kind of a architecture, or to implement this kind of a security things, we need a Microsoft Entra ID, client ID, and the password, and we'll see how can we create that. Okay, for that, let's go to Azure AI portal. So let me click on this, and I can create a duplicate also. So let me create a duplicate. First, I will create a Entra app. For that, I can search for Entra. Okay, Microsoft Entra ID. So let me click on here. I can register an app here. So let me do a app registration. I can use this particular name in the app. So I can say app. I am using the single tenant only. So let's register the app. Okay. First, I have registered the app. Next is I'm going to give permission to this particular app. Okay. For that, this menu. Okay. So how I got this menu? Let me close this. Let me show it again. So from the Azure AI Foundry, I'm going to click on the OpenAI portal. Okay. So in this portal, I'm going to click on Access Control IAM. Okay. Now click on add a role assignment. Now search for Foundry User. So I need to give Foundry User permission. Now next, in the members, select the user group or the services. Now click on the select members. Okay. So here we will be giving this permission to this particular app. This is the Entra ID app that we have created. So let me give the permission. Select. Now next. Now review and assign. So let me assign this role to this Entra ID app. Okay. So the assignment is completed, in progress. Okay, that is completed. Okay. Now I'm going to switch this into the my Entra ID menu. Okay, here I'm switching to this tab. So if you come here in the Entra ID, here we can see the client ID or application ID. We can see here. So let me copy this. We can go back to our Visual Studio Code, and this is our client ID. Let me paste it here. Now we need to create a client secret. Okay, for that, we have a client secret. Let me click on client secret, new client secret, give something like app secret. This is the name, and it is 6 months is the validity. Now I have to take the value from here, not this secret under secret ID. We have to take the value. So I'm going to copy this value and paste it here. Okay, I'm executing. Okay, so we have got what we need. We have the client ID is there, client secret is there, we have the tenant ID, project URL, and the model. Okay, now let me go back and explain it again. So we have the client ID and the client secret. So based on this client ID and the client secret, we will the Python will internally trigger to the Microsoft Entra ID, which will be validated, and necessary permissions token will be passed to the Python, which contain the permissions, and this token will be passed to the Azure AI Foundry to get the result. So here it will validate, ensure that it is a valid ID or valid request. Okay, so in this way it is providing kind of a double protection to our API calls. Okay, now go back to the Visual Studio Code and let's complete this. Okay, now maybe like in 3 or 4 steps, we will able to complete this. Now let's build a credentials. Okay, so here I can build a credentials which require client ID. Here we have the client ID is there. I can have a endpoint client secret credential. We need to have a client ID. We need to have a tenant ID. Now we need a client secret. Okay. Now let's create a project client. So let's have a project client. CLIENT is a project client. I can create a AI project client which needed endpoint. Endpoint is the project URL. Then we have the client ID. Now I can pass the credential as my credentials. So credentials we already created it here. Okay. Okay. Now we have the project client is ready. Let me correct this spelling. Project client is ready. Okay. Still it's not correct. Okay. Now here it is story. Okay. So we have deployed the model, OpenAI model. Now I'm going to connect with the OpenAI model. So I need to create a client for the OpenAI, right? So for that, I can easily create a OpenAI client. Okay. From the project client, I can create a get OpenAI client. Okay. Now we have the OpenAI client. Now we can trigger our queries. So let's have the response. I can use OpenAI client dot responses dot create. I can pass the model. So model will be the model. Model will be the model. And I can give a input. I can say explain what is AI Foundry in 10 words. Let's execute it. So once this is done, I can print response dot output text. I believe it is output underscore text. Yeah. So execution is completed. Now let me print this. Okay. So here we can see the result. It says about platform providing infrastructure, tools, services to build deployable AI. So that is in a 10 words about AI Foundry, Azure AI Foundry. So I hope it is clear. Okay. So these things are very important, like creating a project, deploying the model and Entra ID. Those things are important to connect with our Python with the Azure AI Foundry. So hope it's clear. So if you have any questions, please ask me in the comment box. I will try to answer that. Please do like and subscribe. Have a nice day. Bye bye.